The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects.
First of all,
This is the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
it might be cool, I don't know. And if it's not, I don't care.
The BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons works for ESPN. He's also named the sports guy, and he writes a comical sports column. He must be a popular dude.
The BS Report.
It's got a real dirty sound, like a rusty steak knife cutting through a well-aged steak.
Now.
Here's Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the BS Report. Another sunny day here in Southern California. It's especially sunny because this is a guy I've always wanted to have in the podcast. He's a hard man to pin down. He's on the Subway Fresh Take hotline right now, and he is the producer of our Fab Five documentary that premieres on ESPN Sunday night, 9 o'clock. Jalen Rose, what's happening?
I'm all good. This is my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
So how long did you want to do this documentary?
I've wanted to do it for 19 years. And ever since Jim Rome wrote his book about the Fab Five, which was a bestseller, I always wanted to be able to tell the story of the Fab Five from one of the Fab Five, from all of the Fab Five. And ESPN presented that opportunity 20 years later, and we're very excited to watch it on Sunday.
Mitch Albom wrote the book, you meant. You said Jim Rome.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. Did you guys like that book? How'd you feel about it?
Really, we boycotted the book as it was happening because we already felt like we were being taken advantage of by the system, whether it was University of Michigan, Nike, a lot of different people that were able to really capitalize financially on the Fab Five. And we knew that the book had legs. We knew that the book would possibly be a bestseller. And we didn't get a dime. So he was able to interview us for the book because he had his media access. So he was really able to take advantage of the situation. I don't take it personal. It's just the system.
But in the book, I mean, there were a couple times. Like I remember there was one of the things that I remember vividly from that book is him being with Chris Webber and Webber seeing the Nike jerseys in the window with his name on it, and they're selling them for $75, and yet he didn't have enough money to buy a hamburger.
Right. That's technically how it works. I wonder if Tom Izzo, the head coach of Michigan State, Jim Calhoun, the coach of UConn, Lane Kiffin, the coach of USC, Jim Tressel, the coach of Ohio State, I wonder if those guys feel like college athletes should be paid.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, and you guys were really the first college athletes that I can remember who were pretty vocal about that you thought the system was not fair, especially like when you think of the kind of impact that you had those 2 years and probably the amount of jerseys. What did they make, like $10 million a year off you guys?
Yes, they did. When we got to the University of Michigan, they were making around $2 million in apparel sales. That shot up to around $10 million once we arrived on campus.
Wow. You know, the one thing that I thought, I saw the final cut of the documentary. You might have had one more version that they might be tweaking this week, but the one thing that I'm not sure came across well enough was that when you guys all started as freshmen, when not just when it was three of you, but when it was eventually became all five, what a big deal that was at the time, because freshmen weren't respected like that. It was almost like you had to work your way up. You guys were the first team that said, no, we're rolling it out. And now when you think like what college basketball is like now, you have these freshmen that are stars right away. They leave and they go to the NBA. But back in your day, that wasn't the case, right?
The game has changed so much. In the early 90s, there was a freshman that signed a letter of intent. You'll be happy to contribute on a good team, and then hope your junior year your game matured to where you could play consistent minutes, and then put yourself in a position come 12th grade to be a pro. And we bucked that system because we have 4 McDonald's All-Americans, 5 All-Americans overall that were willing to supplement our egos, all signed a letter of intent to go to the same school, not only to win a national championship, but to create a lifelong bond that could not be broken. And we were able to do that along with changing the game on and off the floor.
And you had Jawan, I guess. I mean, you and Chris were the last two to commit. Jawan was the first of the big guys to commit, and then he got Ray Jackson and Jimmy King. Did you always know you were going to Michigan? Who were the other candidates?
Well, as a Detroit native, Michigan was always my favorite school. I was a huge fan, actually, of the football team, in particular their helmets. So I I always loved Michigan, but I did take other visits. I took a visit to UNLV. Anderson Hunt, who was the 90s Final Four MVP, actually went to my high school. So I was a fan of UNLV. I took a visit to Michigan State because Steve Smith was like a big brother to me, and I idolized Magic Johnson, and I wanted to be a point guard to follow in their footsteps. I also took a visit to Syracuse because Derek Coleman is also like a big brother to me, and he was a Detroit native. So those were the schools I took visits to, but I eventually chose Michigan. And a lot of people don't know I wore number 42 in high school, and the reason why Chris wore 4 in college and I wore 5 in college because we were the 4th and the 5th people to sign for the Fab Five.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Was there pressure on you in Detroit to join this whole thing? Did you feel that from like your friends, people in high school, all that stuff?
Well, in particular for my mom. My mom is my biggest critic, my biggest fan. My grandmother, she's 93 right now, and every time someone would think about saying my name on the news, she'd be popping in a VHS tape and recording it. I have scrapbooks from when I was a 5th grader through now when I'm doing media. So because of that, I wanted to be close to my mother and my grandmother and give them an opportunity to still watch me play and feel like they were 100% a part of what I was doing as a basketball player.
And in the documentary, you said you wore 42 in high school because it was the number that your dad wore. Your dad was Jimmy Walker, who was a famous college player and a good NBA player, too. He wore 24. You didn't have a relationship with him, so you wore 42 because it was 24 backwards. Have you had contact with him the last 10 years, or is that a relationship that never got going?
That was a relationship that never got going. He died in 2007. I was at his funeral. That was really the first time we were in the same place at the same time. And when you're young and you're eating mayonnaise sandwiches and going to sleep with skull caps and hoodies on and kerosene heaters, hot plates warming up, water to wash up, you know, you have a certain bitterness about you. And I had that about my biological father because I felt like since he was the number 1 pick in the 1967 draft, he should have been able to influence my life, even if him and my mom weren't an item. So since that didn't happen, I did wear number 42 out of spite and out of immaturity as well, because his number was 24, because I told myself he would know my name one day.
And he was also, you mentioned he was drafted in 67. That was one of the first years that guys coming out of college started making big money. I think he signed one of the first big money rookie contracts. And
well, compared to where I was living, I'm pretty sure whatever he was making could have helped.
Yeah. And did he reach out to you at any point?
Actually, he wrote me a letter during the time Mitch Albom was writing the Fab Five book. Up until that time, I had zero contact with him. Mitch Albom reached out to him for the book, and because of the book, and he had a lot of pride, he wrote me a letter just to let me know he wasn't trying to piggyback off me or my career, but that Mitch Albom reached out to him for the book. And he wrote me a letter, and at the time I got it during the Final Four of my freshman year, and I wasn't ready to open it. So I actually kept the letter till around my 6th or 7th year in the NBA, and I finally opened the letter later.
And what did it say?
It just told me that he was watching me, he knew who I was, he was proud of me, and continued to do what I was doing. And it made me feel good because I opened it at a time of my life where I felt like I was mature enough to deal with whatever was going to be said in the letter.
Right. You guys, I mean, so you were, I think, class of 90 in high school? Or class of 91?
91.
Yeah. And that was the first generation of that. The AAU thing really took off in the 80s. But you probably knew guys like Chris Webber and even Jawan. You knew those guys from when you were, what, 12, 13 years old?
Yes, indeed. Me and Chris played AAU together when we were 12 and under for a team called the Super Friends. So we played together 13 under, 15 under, 17 under, and 19 under. We met Jawan at Nike camp during high school between our freshman and sophomore years. So we became friends with Jawan also. So we had a long-standing relationship before the University of Michigan.
Yeah, and you guys actually, little known fact, you guys are on Hoop Dreams.
Yes, we were. That was me, the skinny kid with the bad skin, the bad teeth, and the terrible haircut. I was in there. I made a cameo. William Gates, the guy who was featured in Hoop Dreams, was actually my teammate.
Right. And he was pretty good. He hurt his knee in college, but it's funny watching that and seeing all the high school kids. There's a lot of recognizable ones.
No, he hurt his knee at the McDonald's. He hurt his knee at Nike camp. During the filming of that movie is when he hurt his knee.
And then I think he came back, but then he made it worse. And yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
His initials, yeah.
Yes, indeed.
C-Webb, in high school, especially, you have a little bit of the footage in the documentary. C-Webb, like 15, 16-year-old C-Webb, was almost unlike anybody that we've seen at that level. I mean, he was so athletic. He could dribble full court. He was 6'9". He basically had every skill you would ever want from a power forward, right?
Yes, indeed. Growing up, I always felt like he'd be the greatest power forward of all time. Like a lot of youngsters saw Shawn Kemp late in his career. I felt like Chris was an advanced version of Shawn Kemp. He had the athleticism, the power, the charisma, the ability to pass, the ability to shoot. I really felt like he had the ability to change the game, and he was able to do that. I mean, he was a top player in high school. He was the number one player in the country. He's a top player in college. He was the number one player in the draft. Went on to make 5 All-Star teams, get his number retired by the Sacramento Kings. So he went on to have a very good career.
I wrote about him in my book because, on the one hand, I think his career is disappointing because, as you said, he could have been the greatest power forward of all time. He had every tool you would ever want. And when you look at his career and you think, all right, he's definitely one of the top 75 players ever. He never won a title. He made 5 All-Star teams. He was top 5 All-NBA one year. On the other hand, he could have been the greatest power forward of all time. And it's like when you look back at how his NBA career went, he's at Golden State for 1 year with Don Nelson. They don't get along. He demands a trade, goes to Washington. That situation, that team was never really that good, doesn't work out. He's immature. He does some things he shouldn't have done. Goes to Sacramento. Things all fall into place. Then he hurts his knee. I mean, if you did his career 10 times, I think that was probably the worst-case scenario for that career. I feel like it should have been a lot better. You agree?
He would agree also because, as you mentioned, when he injured his knee, that Sacramento team, though it never made it to the NBA Finals, was an exciting team to watch. They won a lot of basketball games, but they really weren't able to take that next step. And with him as their leader and their best player, I know that's something that he really wanted to be able to do, but he was not able to do. Then once he left Sacramento, he went to Philadelphia, then Golden State, then Detroit. So I understand where you're coming from when you say that, but as a kid who grew up on the west side of Detroit, I'm pretty sure he's very happy with the fact that he was able to accomplish all of the things that he did.
Well, and then also the other part is he probably made about $250 million playing basketball.
Yes, he did. That doesn't hurt anyway. That's what I always tell people. There's 2 games, the score of the game and the game of life. I love Emil Robinson to death. He won the championship in 1989 by hitting 2 free throws against Seton Hall.
Yeah.
And that's all fine, dandy, and great. I wish the Fab Five would have been able to accomplish that. But I will take the fact that we lost 2 finals, and I'm healthy and happy with my life as opposed to what I saw with Ramil Robinson on the E60 piece.
Right, that's a good point. The other thing with C-Webb, and I thought about this when I was watching the documentary because I hadn't really thought about your final game in your sophomore year, the famous timeout game. You lose to that North Carolina team in the last 20 seconds, partly because of the timeout that he called. He didn't have any left. In the pros, I always felt like he was somebody that in the last 3 minutes, especially in big situations, he would get tight. And I don't know if he was that way before that moment. Do you think that timeout moment fundamentally changed the way he approached the last 3 minutes of games?
It had to have some type of effect because that was a catastrophic event for a college kid. I mean, you got 35 million people watching. You're a first-team All-American. It's not like he was a power forward or a center that was a gump and got the rebound and didn't know what to do. There's footage in the documentary of Chris as an 8th grader getting the rebound going coast-to-coast dunking. So he definitely knew what to do, and we knew how to play off of that. So I think once he traveled, they didn't call it, and the timeout situation happened. That did have some type of mental effect in a negative way on how he approached life, more so than just basketball. And that's why I think that he's still in the position right now, though he's happy with his life, doing great things on TV, that he chose at this point not to give a 2011 interview for the documentary, because it still stings, it still burns for him to talk about.
Yeah.
But it doesn't affect the integrity of the story at all, because it's still going to be told, and the story represents 91 to 93, not 2011.
And I think the single most powerful scene in the documentary is the camera just stays with him as he walks off the court after the timeout, and it lingers for over a minute. You basically walk with him off the court, underneath the tunnel, all the way through, with the camera guys just following him backwards, taking pictures of him, snapping shots, and that's when you realize, like, you know, this is just too big for a 19-year-old kid. I mean, I don't know how anybody bounces back from that.
That's why we wanted to capture it in that manner, because when you get a chance to see it from that light, you understand that, wow, he made a terrible mistake during the game, but also this can have an impact for his life. Fortunately for him, he wasn't a guy that went on to work a 9-to-5 job and didn't make it to the NBA, and he had to deal with the pressures of that situation. He did go on to be the number one pick, have a good NBA career, so there were other things that he was able to be proud of in his life and still continue to be able to be proud of.
I think it was interesting that he didn't want to appear in this documentary because, you know, I was just looking at this from afar, and I don't know either of you guys, but, you know, obviously there was a little bit of even though you guys were buddies, best friends, running mates, all that stuff, there had to have been a little rivalry between you guys, and it makes me wonder, this documentary was your thing. Maybe that's why he didn't want to appear in it?
No, not at all, because he had the opportunity to come stand right next to me and do whatever he wanted to do to influence it and have an even playing. It wasn't, you know, Jalen just trying to do a doc, come on everybody, let's tell the story. Life is all about timing, and it's 20 years later. Steve Fisher is coaching a top 10 program at San Diego State that he rebuilt.
Yeah.
Jimmy and Ray are coaching basketball in high school. They're happy with their lives. Jawan's still a member of the Miami Heat, and myself and Chris are working in the media. And now ESPN decides that they would like to do a critically acclaimed piece on our team. We were all excited, enthusiastic, and appreciated the fact that we were included. But for whatever reason, he just felt like he didn't want to give his testimony. So I respect that. It's not personal towards me, but I think it would have helped him a lot from a clarity standpoint to just wake up on Monday after the doc was played on Sunday and have some sort of relief. And that's what I wanted to have. That's why I was very forthright in the documentary, because I did not want to have any regrets about shoulda, woulda, coulda. I wanted to say my piece, say 100% what I felt, how I saw it, how it happened, and have a piece of closure. I'm calling this documentary the Bible of the Fab Five story.
Well, you say for whatever reason he didn't want to appear. I can't think of a good reason why he didn't want to appear because, as you said...
I couldn't either. That's why I called him 500 million times, and the powers that be did at ESPN. We all called him and asked him to participate because we knew how important this was to be able to tell our story, to be able to tell a story from our voice. And everybody was so excited to participate. I mean, yeah. Coach Fisher, Coach Dutcher, Coach Watson, the members of the Fab Five, Dugan Fife, James Bosco, Rob Pelinka, you know, all of the media members that remember us from those days, Ice Cube, Chuck D, everybody was so excited about this opportunity, but unfortunately he felt like at this time he didn't want to talk about the events that took place those 2 years, but the story goes on because it's a story of the Fab Five, not necessarily the Fab One.
Well, I think he's going to regret it because, you know, this thing will be on 25 years from now and he'll be watching it with his grandkids or whoever. And they're going to ask him why he didn't want to be in it. And I really don't think any reason that he comes up with is going to be that good of one. You know, I can't help but wonder, though, you know, he obviously had the fallout from the Ed Martin thing and you know, you guys lost your banners in the Michigan Stadium or the Michigan Arena. And maybe that was the part that was too raw for him because, as you point out in the documentary, he when he held that press conference in 2002, and he really kind of trashed Ed Martin and made it, you know, told some version of the story that I just don't think was true. And maybe, do you think he's embarrassed by that?
Possibly, somewhat. And he should be, because Ed Martin was not a booster for the University of Michigan, not an alumnus, not a financial advisor, not an agent, not a runner. He was somebody that help influence inner city kids to stay off the street, to stop being kids that would come up to someone and stick a gun in their face and try to rob them. He would try to reward the kids that were trying to do the right thing. That's what you want big brothers and uncles and people in the neighborhood to do, and that's what he was. It just so happened that Jalen Rose and Chris Webber became members of the Fab Five and went on to the NBA. This took place 10 or 15 years before Chris Webber and Jalen Rose, which had nothing to do with college sports at all. And I think once he lied to the grand jury about not knowing Ed Martin, that just started a spiral downhill of untruths that he had to continue to carry. And that was really the issue, and I think that's where things started to get out of whack.
And you were honest about that. You did get money.
Of course I was honest about it. I was so honest that I wish I had 10 other people like that in my life.
Right.
Like, the thing that is head-scratching to me is I didn't come from a well-to-do family. I understand what it's like to struggle. So there was nothing wrong. There's nothing in the NCAA record books that states that you can't have a previous relationship with someone, whether they're rich, poor, black, white, or indifferent. That was not a violation, my relationship with Ed Martin. Not at all. And I knew that when I was testifying in front of the grand jury. That's why I told the truth. Yes, he did give me a winter coat before. Yes, he did get me a pair of boots. Yes, he did pick me up and make sure that I wasn't hanging out in the hood and standing on the corner so I could go cut grass, and teach me how to be a young man who would shovel snow during the winter or cut grass or carry newspapers. Or I was that type of kid. So, and he helped influence that, and I was very thankful for that. He did that for myself, Chris Webber, and a whole host of other youth in the city of Detroit.
Yeah, it seems like if he gave Chris money, it seems like it probably happened after he had played his last game for Michigan during that little 2-month span before the draft. Here's some money, you'll pay me back when you can. And then Chris never paid him back. That's my theory. I don't know if that's true, but
that's my theory also. I wasn't standing there when the transaction happened. It went from being, in my opinion, petty cash to make sure that I keep you off the street, keep your nose clean, reward you for being a nice young man.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, you're going to the draft after your sophomore year. I want to protect you from the agents. I'm going to protect you from the runners. I'm going to make sure that you're able to keep your nose clean, stay in the gym, work out, and focus on being the number one pick in the draft. So if you need me to allow you to hold something until you get drafted, here it is. Yeah. Because the stories that come out about him, about these big 6- and 7-figure deals, with all due respect and rest in peace to Ed, he wasn't that type of multi-millionaire where he had money like that. So for him to do that for Chris, in my opinion, that's where their situation became a business deal. And when I think Chris didn't hold up his end of the bargain, that's when it became an issue, and that's why interviews like you saw in 2002 happened.
And you say in the documentary that you kind of chewed out Chris a little bit. What was your friendship like after that whole thing happened?
Well, we still were friends then. We still are friends now, but I was upset because Ed Martin was a family member to us. He was like a big brother. He was like an uncle. And again, it wasn't just Jalen and Chris. It was hundreds of kids, literally, before us, 10 years before us, and after us, as you see. It wasn't just about, oh, you're the top basketball player in the state, so now I'm going to do what I can to get next to you. 99.9% of the kids that Ed Martin was around to help influence, some of them never made it out of the hood, period, let alone make it to college. Definitely, me and Chris were the first two to ever make it to the NBA.
Yeah. Let's go back to when you guys hit the scene, because it was a really, really, really fascinating time just in America, because you had hip-hop taking off, and that started to trickle into basketball. You guys were the first team that kind of captured that. Not just with the fashion, but with the trash talking, the way you carried yourself, with the swagger. How much of an effect did hip-hop have on that stuff?
It had a huge impact because in the early 90s, people were still trying to wonder if hip-hop was a fad or not. So I was listening to Public Enemy and Ghetto Boys and NWA, Gangstar. These were artists that we liked, that influenced us before college. Like, these were artists that I was listening to in high school. So once I got to college on the big stage, once we got to college on the big stage, media members coming to the locker room and they hear that type of music, they were looking at us like we were from another planet. Like, it seems second nature now when you watch TV and you see an athlete get off the bus, he has his headphones on, he's listening to his tunes, or you go in the locker room and the music is turned up. That wasn't the case in the early 90s. You didn't go to college games and pro games and hear rap music. That was not the case. You would hear whoop, there it is, but you wouldn't hear rap music. So, but now it's a part of our culture. You see it on commercials. You see everybody trying to capture that audience. We were the first people to really help bring it mainstream on and off the floor.
And it was kind of a perfect storm because, you know, hip-hop started to take off and rap in the mid-'80s in a little bit of a mainstream way, and then it gained a lot of momentum in the late '80s. Meanwhile, you kids were probably listening to it when you're 12, 13. Now you're getting older as it's going. You were the first generation of college kids who that music really probably truly meant something to you from before puberty, you know? And I feel like when I look at those tapes now, it doesn't seem that crazy to see all the stuff that you guys did. But back in 1991, it was like, oh my God, what's going on here?
Exactly. And this was pre-internet. This was pre-YouTube. This was pre-normal cell phone, BlackBerry, iPhone, iPad. I remember going to the dorm room to listen to the answer machine to try to figure out what a party was that night. Or if a such and such girl called me, you had to go back and listen to the answer machine. So times had changed, and we were a part of that evolution with hip-hop, with styles, ball heads. That was a sign of camaraderie. Long shorts. We had an opportunity because Nike was our outfitter. We felt like since we have an outfitter, we might as well be comfortable and look how we want to look. Black shoes, black socks. We felt if we're going to be anti-establishment, we might as well take it all the way there and be ourselves, because we'll never be embraced like the kids at Duke, at Indiana, and Notre Dame. And we represented that, and we understood it.
Well, Jalen, this needs to go on your tombstone because, as the documentary points out, you were the guy who came up with let's make the shorts longer. Jordan, I guess, made the initial groundwork, but you and Jordan together, I think, saved the world from the nut hugger shorts that we saw in the 80s.
The soft pouring shorts.
Yeah, the John Stockton look.
Imagine Shaquille O'Neal and LeBron James wearing those things.
Oh, my Lord. You know, the other thing, you didn't mention this in the documentary. Hip-hop was a huge influence on how you guys acted and carried yourself. But the other thing, the Bad Boy Pistons in 88, 89, and 90, that was the first NBA team that not only was super physical, but was one of those stare you down, try to intimidate you, all that stuff. Is it fair to say that influenced you guys as well?
No doubt about it. In high school, I was able to attend Isaiah Thomas camp and then play with the team after the camp was ended during the day. The Bad Boy Pistons came to Ann Arbor and practiced with and against our teams while we were in college. They were mentors. They were idols to us. I remember rocking my You Can't Touch This MC Hammer T-shirts representing my Bad Boy Pistons, good, bad, or indifferent. On the good, when we won back-to-back championships, I remember crying hearing Johnny Moe say, and Bird steals the ball underneath the DJ and he scores. That was a part of my life. You probably didn't see me, but I was in the line walking behind Isaiah and Lambeer when we didn't shake the Bulls' hand and we walked off the floor, because I was that. That's who we represented from being Detroit natives, and also the Pistons had a major influence on how we played and how we approached basketball.
Yeah, I wish that had been in the documentary. I think that we could have squeezed 2 minutes in. I didn't realize you were at that 91 Game 4.
People, you're trying to tell their story. Think like, you know this better than me. You could do a documentary an hour and a half on one guy. We're trying to do it on five guys.
So you were there for 1991 Game 4 Bulls Pistons sweep. You were in the arena for that game?
No, but I was in the line behind the guys walking off the court.
Oh, I got you.
On TV in my head.
I got you. Yeah, and that was right. That was the same year that you guys were the freshmen. And,
Yes.
you watch these highlights. Some of the basically you would have been thrown out for half the stuff that we show in the highlights of this thing, right? The stare downs, the hard hits, the dunks and falling the guy over. All that stuff gets you thrown out now.
Yes, indeed. That's when basketball, to me, was at its purest form, because you had players competing at an elite level physically and mentally, and they didn't give an inch. I'm talking about, like, if you got past me, you're hitting the floor. It's not like, good move, pat you on the butt, I'm going to get you back.
Right.
I'm trying to win every possession. Players today don't try to win every possession.
Well, I'm going to throw this out at you. You tell me if you agree or disagree. I hate what's happened in the NBA and to college to a lesser extent, because the trash talking went too far and the physical stuff went too far, and now we've swung the other way. And anytime there's a hint of any of that stuff, the refs have to crack down, overreact, double technicals, let me call the flagrant. I would argue that the Fab Five was the first team that really started pushing that stuff to a level that was going a little too far. And it's not like you guys didn't know what you were doing. It was the guys who followed, who emulated you. Right?
I know I was undisciplined, out of control, unpolished, didn't know some of the things that was coming out of my mouth, cussing like a sailor. I understand that, and a lot of that stuff did go too far. As I look back at it, as someone that cares about the youth and wants to be a role model as best I can, some of that stuff did go too far. But when you're on a national stage, you really don't know how to respond, and that's how we carried ourselves. And I agree with you about the NBA kind of going too far left and then trying to crack back. The same with college. I remember being in games and Hightower, who's still a referee to this day, coming to the huddle saying, "Stop smiling. Like, that's not funny. Like, if he continues to laugh, coach, I'm going to throw him out of the game."
Wow.
So a lot of that stuff did go too far. But it's the same with style in the urban community. You go from wearing baggy shorts to now all of a sudden you're wearing your pants below your butt.
Right.
You go from having one or two tattoos to tattoos all over your head, neck, and face. So I understand how a lot of that stuff has really gone so far left, but the ability to express yourself is what makes this country great, and that's why it's such a great nation.
Well, I'm with you. I don't think that you guys went too far. I mean, you watch the documentary compared to what we see now. And we were mild and meek compared to what you see now. You see a guy doesn't have a basket all day, but he gets a one dunk, and not only does he celebrate it like it's worth 100 points, but that's his only play of the game. That may make SportsCenter that night. Yeah.
So now people are looking for lightning in the bottle instead of a consistent flow of good play, responsible situation out there on the floor, and ultimately playing to win. Like, I like Blake Griffin, for example. He's a fantastic player, but he's playing on one of the worst teams in the NBA. But he has a Blake meter on SportsCenter.
Yep.
So it's not really just the athletes, it's the media also.
Yeah, and I think the problem came 4, 5, 6, 7 years later. The people who are now in college or in the NBA who had watched you guys and really admired how you handled those people who tried to emulate you took it too far. And I remember like going to Celtic games in 97 and 98. Antoine Walker, he's doing the wiggle. We're down 15. He's making a three. It's like, we're down 15 with 4 minutes left. You're doing a wiggle?
A player getting a touchdown in football, they down 4 touchdowns. A guy getting a sack, his only sack of the year, and it's 2 minutes to go in the game, and they down 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
I totally understand what you mean.
Well, and the other problem is, by all accounts, you were one of the great trash talkers in the history of trash talking.
Yes, that was something that I really took serious. I knew the game was physical and mental, and that's what you had to do to be a performer on the courts where I grew up playing street ball. Like, I didn't grow up playing I grew up playing in hostile environments, in backyards, at parks, a lot of places that people wouldn't go to hang out, let alone go to play basketball. So you had to not only be a good player, but you had to be able to hold your own, and you had to be able to fight for your space. because sometimes you might hit a game-winning shot on a guy, and then he'll just punch you in the mouth. It has nothing to do with basketball. So there's an element of toughness that you have to have beyond just to score the game.
You know, C-Webb was always fascinating to me in this, and actually this is one of the better parts of Album's book. C-Webb, because he also had that whole Detroit Country Day experience, very articulate in the old school manner, really intelligent, and he could, you know, the cameras could come on and he could immediately be the most articulate basketball player in college. But he also had that street side too, and it seemed like he never figured out which side he was on. Does that make sense?
Of course it does, because here you have a kid that grew up in the inner city, but his high school experience was at Detroit Country Day, one of those prestigious schools where you drive past the parking lot, you see Range Rovers, Benzes, and BMWs. You have to have a shirt and a tie. You can't wear hair on your face. But also you're getting one of the best quality educations that a youth can have.
Yep.
So now you translate that into a player that's hanging around 14 other teammates who aren't exposed to that at all. It becomes a melting pot of trying to fit in and be the best of both worlds, and I'm pretty sure that was tough for him. But I would have rather had that and be exposed to not be exposed at all.
Hey, yeah, I would say your high school experience is probably a little different.
I would have loved to have been able to go to the dentist, go to the dermatologist. I would have loved to have been able to have a responsible conversation every now and then.
Going through those 2 years, I totally get why you lost to Duke in the finals. It was a great Duke team. I mean,
they were better than us. They had just beaten UNLV, a team that we idolized. Christian Laettner, Grant Hill, Bobby Hurley, Coach K, one of the greatest of all time. They were better than us. They smacked us. We never had their number. They were the bully on the block. And if we did have a chance, it's kind of like in boxing. We didn't box Duke. We tried to fight Duke, and that never works. You got to be able to stay into who you are, and I give them a lot of credit.
Yeah, they were, and Laettner was a senior at that point. I mean, nowadays he would have been in the NBA 2 years before, and probably Grant Hill would have been one and out and been right in the NBA.
Right.
At the next year, though, you lose to North Carolina in the finals. Like, let's just forget the timeout thing for a second. How do you lose that game? Like, look at the guys who are in North Carolina: Eric Montross, Donna Williams, George Lynch. I mean, you guys had so much more talent. How do you not win that game?
No excuse at all. We got beat. We lost to a team that we were better than, a team that we beat earlier that year, a team that we frankly were overconfident against. And the thing that worked against us, as I look back at it, I wish we'd have played Kentucky in the finals, because we were more jacked to play against them, because a lot of people at that time, and they were playing good basketball throughout the tournament. They were blowing teams out by 25 or 30. And we took the challenge that a lot of people feel that not only we're going to lose, but we're going to get blown out. Like, that's not happening. So we were able to bottle that and turn that emotion into great basketball against Kentucky. But we didn't do the same thing against North Carolina. We just kind of showed up and played, and they beat us. I give them a lot of credit.
So if you play that team 10 times, how many times do you win?
We win 9.
Yeah. To me, that's
head scratching and make me kick myself in the butt with a Timberland boot to this day.
Yeah, because the game's been on, ESPN Classic, all these other channels, and I watch it and I'm just totally confused. First of all, Juwan Howard and Chris Webber on the same team in college as sophomores. Like, hey, they should just given you the rings.
Exactly. Totally no excuse for losing to Carolina. I give Duke all of the credit in the world, but we were a better team than Carolina, and we lost that game. That's the most disappointing game that we played during those 2 years.
Were you out-coached?
I don't think we were out-coached. We were outplayed. We knew what to do.
Yeah.
We just didn't do it.
And then you didn't cover this in the documentary, but the third year, you and Juwan stayed.
Yes, we did stay.
How far did you go? I can't remember.
We went to the Elite Eight and lost to Arkansas, and I'll never forget before that game, and really that season, me and Juwan, it just seemed like we were emotionally spent because there was so much said, so much done, and we got smacked by Arkansas. we should have been a team that was at least able to make the Final Four. But I remember sitting in my locker after the game like, I'm kind of glad this is over.
Why didn't you come out the previous year?
I should have. I think coming back my junior year was a little too long. I should have came out after my sophomore year. So should Jawan.
Yeah.
Our goal as the Fab Five was to win a championship and all come out. That was the plan, but that plan kind of got foiled when we lost.
As a pro, you went to Denver, and I don't know, it just didn't ever seem like the right fit. What happened there?
I got drafted by Denver, 13th pick, a team that had just had success in the playoffs the year before, and they decided they want to dismantle their team. And if you look at what happened with that team over the couple of years I was there, after my second year, they basically traded the core group of players, and people saw the Cleveland Cavaliers lose 26 straight games. The team they passed was the Denver Nuggets, the 97-98 Nuggets, after Bernie Bickerstaff, who I'm very grateful that he drafted me, and he was a great mentor of mine as a young player. At that time, Denver was going through an ownership change. He was not only the president and general manager, but also the coach. And nowadays, you don't see too many people with that type of power. So when he felt the ownership was changing and he was out of favor, he kind of traded away their whole team.
Well, the biggest mistake,
so that they wouldn't succeed after after him.
The biggest mistake was Juwan and Chris were on Washington at that point. And
yes,
I did not have
as somebody that played with both of them, as happy as I was that they were playing on the same team, I knew a lot of that was that they played the same position, and I knew it would really be tough for both of them to maximize their true skill because they both excel playing power forward.
Well, I didn't have a column back then, but I remember telling this to anybody I talked to about basketball for about 2 years. It drove me crazy that Washington just didn't trade for you. Just get the band back together.
Nice. I would have hoped so, because at that time I was playing pretty good. I remember having a couple of good games against that team. That was awesome.
That would have worked, right? Something good could have happened.
Basketball is all about chemistry. We talk about the Heat, we talk about the Knicks, but the teams that are still winning are the teams, the Celtics, the Lakers, the Spurs. It's a team game.
So you go to Indiana.
Yes.
And you had a really nice run at Indiana, and you played on a couple of teams that were title caliber, including the 98 team, and nobody remembers this now. Jordan, Pippen, a little worn down. Jordan's, mentally is still the best ever. Physically starting to wear down a little bit. You guys had an unbelievable chance to beat them in Game 7, and Jordan and Pippen just wouldn't let it happen.
We were up 17 and lost the game. They put in a guy named Tony Kukoc who hit a few threes. They had another blonde-haired guy named Dennis Rodman who only grabbed like 24 rebounds. Those are the guys that really helped them get back into the game. And as a fan of the game, not somebody that was a player, because I remember being on the bench at this time watching this, we were up 17. And it was almost like watching a video game. Jordan and Pippen increased their defensive intensity. We could not get the ball across half court. They stole the ball from us like 7 out of 9 possessions. And it was like, it was surreal how fast they got back into the game and took control. So that's why I have a lot of respect for those players and a lot of respect for Phil Jackson, because he was the coach of the team that beat us in Game 7, even though we were the only team to take them to Game 7. And he was also the coach of the team that beat us in Indiana when he was the coach of the Lakers.
I wrote about that game in my book because it's a fascinating game to rewatch, because the Bulls are basically out of gas, and they just won because they controlled the boards. And it was almost like a hockey game. They had the ball for like a minute at a time, and you guys could never get in a groove. But, man, that's a game that if it's played 10 times, I think you win 5 of them. And then you go 2 years later.
We were right there. It was a great game. I remember Jordan after the game saying, you know what, they pushed us to the limit. This is probably going to be my last year. Then he hit the Byron Russell jumper, and that was it.
If you don't count the year that he came back from baseball and Orlando beat them, which I don't really count because he wasn't totally in basketball shape, but That was the
Right.
closest they ever came to losing during that 91 to 98 stretch. Cause,
Yes, and people don't put asterisks in sports. And, of course, I love Akeem Olajuwon. He's one of the greatest players I've ever played against, so definitely one of the greatest centers of all time. But they won their 2 championships when Mike was playing baseball. And then the NBA panicked when Jordan left and felt like that we wouldn't be able to get the kind of excitement created for the game after MJ. So they shortened the three-point line.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, I was so upset about that.
It was not a good stretch for the league. Jordan also one of the legendary trash talkers ever. And then you played for the legend, the basketball Jesus, Larry Bird, the all-time greatest trash talker.
Yes, indeed. And he was the person that helped me mature as a professional. He was the person that was a common influence in my life. He's the person that I give the credit to in my adult life for really me being the gentleman I consider myself trying to be today. Because Larry Bird not only was one of the greatest players of all time, but he was such a leader and such a common influence on my life. He validated me on and off the floor, and I'm forever grateful to him because and how life works, being a Pistons fan, as I mentioned, hating the Celtics, loving Magic, hating the Celtics, that was somebody that I rooted against his entire career.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden he becomes my coach, lightning in a bottle. Indiana Pacers go to 3 straight Eastern Conference Finals and make it to the NBA Finals with him as the coach. So I have a tremendous amount of respect for Larry.
Well, 2000 was your breakout year, 99-2000. You guys made the finals again. Some pretty impressive numbers in the playoffs, Mr. Rose.
I played pretty good. I wish we'd have won. People that aren't fans of our team and really didn't follow the game close don't really realize how much we missed Travis Best in that series. I think if we would have been able to have Travis Best on our team, I think that would have gave us a better chance to beat the Lakers. But Shaq was playing at a high level. He was putting up Wilt numbers against us in the finals.
Well, you had 21 a game, 43% from 3. These are in 23 playoff games. You're playing 42 minutes a game. I mean, just watching that year, I'm like, all right, this guy is now blossoming into the guy I always wanted him to be and the guy I always wanted him to be in college. Is that fair?
Exactly. Why did Larry stay the coach? Why couldn't he be my coach for 8 years?
He couldn't handle it, right? He couldn't handle the emotions. I think it chewed him up inside. And you mentioned that final. Shaq was out of his mind, but if you watch those games, it went 6. You guys were right there in those games. And if you had at best...
The game we lost to Indiana, that was the crucial one. Or he hit those 2 threes.
Yeah.
And Kobe with the afro hit that jump shot and looked over the field and told him, calm down, I got this.
Yeah.
That was the game that really, I think, tipped it in the Lakers' favor.
And that was the first glimpse that Kobe's career was maybe going into a place that we had hoped it was going to go. But, that was, I think, his breakout game. You played against Jordan in the 96, 97, 98 stretch. And then you played against Kobe, not just that year, but you were on the floor, and I partially blame you for the 81-point game.
Of course you should blame me. I took about 18 or 20 of that. You should blame me.
So who's better?
The thing that disappointed me about that game, and I'm going to just be honest with you, is that you watch it, you know basketball just as well as anyone. There's a couple of people that can stop that from happening besides the people on the floor, and it's called the coach. And all you got to do is just run at a guy, take the basketball out of his hands, and not allow it to happen. Yep. We all know Kobe's a great player. Of course, he's 6 all-time in scoring, so he can. It's not like Lou Walton scored 35. I mean, Kobe Bryant scored 81. He had just had 65 against the Dallas Mavericks in 3 quarters. Yep. So it's not a total shot for me that he put up big numbers, but I just wish we'd have done a better job of just running at him, taking the ball out of his hands, making him do something else, as opposed to allowing egos to get involved and say, I'm going to teach you guys a lesson.
Yeah.
I didn't respect that.
It was one of the weirdest coach games I've certainly ever seen because...
We were playing zone!
Yeah. And he was making threes.
He played 2-3 zone.
So, Jordan at his best from what you've seen in person on the court versus Kobe at his best. Who do you give the edge to?
And I'm a great person to answer that question. There'll never be another Michael Jordan, but Kobe Bryant is definitely the remix.
Oh, interesting.
No doubt about it, he is. And there will never be another Kobe Bryant.
No.
I remember the days when, and it seems so long ago, when Kobe was a 3-time champion and he could never win without Shaq, and now that the big fella's gone, and then he went and won a championship in Miami with Wade, where does that leave Kobe? Kobe wants to leave L.A. because they're not building a team around him. Then all of a sudden he's back-to-back champion in position for his third.
Yep. Well, I would say that he's probably more fun to play with in 2011 than he was in 2006 during that 81-point game, right?
Of course he was. Of course he was. I mean, it's a lot more fun playing with Paul Gasol, Lamar Odom, and Andrew Bynum than it is Smush Parker and Kwame Brown, I'm sure.
Right. One thing we need to mention, at some point during your career, basically because you played so well for the Pacers, you got signed to a gigantic contract.
Yes,
and as you mentioned before,
he's taking lobster to this day.
And you were, as you said, a kid who grew up eating mayonnaise sandwiches. What was that like to all of a sudden have $89 million on paper or whatever it was?
It was a validation. I remember at 12:01 getting the contract, the parameters of the contract faxed to me, signing it, faxing it back, and saying, I'm not leaving the house, I'm not lifting a finger, I don't want to break a fingernail. I'm going to make sure I'm available to go sign that contract tomorrow morning. And at 9:01, I was right at the Pacers office doing it.
You played with Vince Carter, another interesting guy historically, somebody who I don't think came close to reaching his potential. What do you think happened with him?
I think the worst thing that ever happened for Vince was that at a time when he was a member of the Raptors, people didn't really truly appreciate his greatness for what he was doing for that organization, and they felt like they could replace him. And the things that they didn't like Vince about had necessarily nothing to do with basketball. Yes, he had a time of his career where he was injury-prone and he was missing a lot of games, but as we see the game now, people were trying to be upset at him about trying to make sure his mom had great front row tickets or his mom had a parking spot at the arena, like things that had nothing to do with the sport. And I think both sides grew tired of each other, and once they traded Vince from Toronto, his star in his career never truly was the same.
But I felt like
their organization hasn't been either.
I felt like he sabotaged the situation near the end. You don't agree with that?
No, because I was there, and I know that the situation was sabotaged for him. I know that he had a coach that signed Rayford Austin to a big contract. I remember walking into a hotel watching Sam Mitchell and Rayford Austin standing by the elevator, and Sam telling Rayford, this is your team. You tell Jalen. You tell Vince how it's supposed to be. I'm putting the keys in your hand. I just gave you a $20 million contract. And from there, things started to go downhill.
All right.
And,
well,
that was right after a game, by the way, that Vince got benched and I got benched in the fourth quarter. And then the same thing happened the next night when we went to Portland. And from there on, the situation went downhill for Vince in Toronto.
I still blame Vince a little bit because I went to games that he just basically mailed in. And I just think no matter what's going on with you behind the scenes, when you got people that are in the stands paying to watch you play, you can't mail it in, period.
But and when you have the kind of talent that Vince has, I mean, like, he's arguably the greatest athlete and dunker that the league has seen. He's 6'7". He got arms like Dr. J,
right,
hands like a power forward, can still shoot the three. He's a guy, like we said with Chris Webber, that when I played with him, I felt like, wow, this guy has potential to be one of the greatest players this league has seen.
Right.
So I know where you come from when you say that, and I understand why.
You also ended up near the end of your career in the whole Isaiah Thomas, James Dolan, that whole quagmire.
Yes.
Worst year of your career professionally?
Well, I had a shot of espresso with the Knicks. I was traded to the Knicks on Super Bowl Sunday. It was my first game. And it's not an attractive thing as a veteran to be traded to a team that only has 11 wins. So really, the world saw it as they're bringing on Jalen Rose. He's making all of this money. He should change the situation. But the reality of it was I had 20 games to play. Larry Brown, the person that recruited me heavily, the day I got traded, came out in the paper and said, I don't know why Isaiah would make a move like that when that was total bogus to the public. I played 20 games there, and then I was gone. So I didn't really have a true opportunity as a player to influence the situation. But I know money talks, and people look at salary, so they feel like, I guess, that 20 games I was there, we should have won 20-0.
And you had not a great history with Isaiah Thomas going back from Indiana, correct?
I had a worse history with Larry Brown. I had, at the time, a poor history because of the Indiana scenario with Isaiah. So imagine that melting pot for me as a player to get traded to that team.
There's an urban legend within NBA circles that you punched Isaiah Thomas out once. Is that true?
No, that's not true.
Not true.
I idolize him too much.
Okay. Can I still pass that story around like it's true? Because
that's 100,000% not accurate. I respect Isaiah Thomas so much that when I got traded from the Pacers, even though I felt like the situation could have been handled different publicly and privately by him, I idolized him so much that I never said anything negative about him. And
so
it came full circle to him trading me for the Knicks and then actually doing me a favor and buying me out and allowing me to have the opportunity to go to Phoenix.
It's pretty interesting. You got coached by Larry Bird, Isaiah Thomas, Larry Brown, right, for a little bit.
Yep.
And then
the coach, Dan Issel, Magic Johnson is my idol, played, and I work with him. So being a kid growing up now, I grew up a fan of the 80s in basketball. Magic, Bird, Isaiah, those are three of the biggest names to happen to this league. I never knew those guys would know my name, never, let alone influence my life, and I could call all of them right now. So this game has done so much for me, like I would never complain about.
And Sam Mitchell.
Never happened.
You didn't mention Sam Mitchell. I'd throw him in with Bird, Magic, and Isaiah.
No.
Tell me how you like working for ESPN.
I love it. It's a fantastic experience. I went to college for mass communications, radio, TV, film. A lot of people in this world never get a chance to work in their major. I got a chance to play my dream in the NBA. 13 years while I was doing 6 years of media, Best Damn Sports Show, Sideline with TNT, MTV Movie Awards. I was doing Cold Pizza at the time. So now, even though I'm still fairly young at being 38, this is my 9th full year in the media. So I'm really enjoying it. ESPN is a great opportunity, a great platform. It really puts you in a position to be a great broadcaster, a great journalist, because they have so many different platforms that allow you to express it.
Yeah, you get paid for talking.
You know what I mean? And being around the game you love. I have a season pass. I can go to any game in any arena at any time. That's all I ever wanted as a kid.
Well, you know, I don't know if you know this, but I fell in love with you basically in the 2003-04 stretch for how funny some of your quotes were. And I started putting that in my column nonstop. I think even at the end of the year one year, I had like my 7 favorite Jalen Rose quotes from the year. And behind the scenes, I didn't have quite as much sway as I do now. I was pushing for them to give you a show. And the show would have been you in Toronto on road trips in your hotel room, and we would just have a camera, and you would just interview like your teammates and stuff in your hotel room. I still think that would have made it.
That would have made it. And I remember doing Best Damn Sports Show as a member of the Raptors and still having to be a professional and do my segment. So it's kind of like the good, bad, and the ugly. And you know this as a media or member of the media. You still got to say it how you see it.
Yeah.
So that was a tough balance initially, but the players on my teams, the coaches, the organizations respected I was serious about my media career, so they didn't take it personal if I was a member of a team but still doing my job as a journalist.
I wanted to call it Life on the Road with Jalen Rose. That was the pitch.
You just got to cut off the camera after 11 p.m.
No, that was part of it. I wanted a couple 4 a.m. scenes. Well, maybe we'll find the right player to produce it. Jalen Rose, Fab Five documentary, Sunday night, 9 p.m., a fantastic trip down memory lane. I personally love that team. I loved watching it.
Let's make it happen.
Yeah, it was great. and I hope everybody watches it. And I intentionally did not ask you any 2010-11 NBA questions because you're going to come back, and we can do that down the road.
Yep, that would be my pleasure. I'm one call away. I appreciate what you do as well. You got a great platform, a tremendous influence. You're one of the best at doing it, so anytime you need me, I'm one call away.
Thank you, and we'll do it again down the road. Good luck with documentary. I'll give you a Twitter plug.
You got it. I appreciate it. Have a good one.
So I get to sign off. Whoa.
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at PodCenter at ESPNRadio.com.
Peace out.